Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your space for black news, views, and opinions. Today is Thursday, March 17th. I'm Seth Lemon.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, new details on the arrest of Olympic athlete Brittney Griner in Russia. How long the WNBA star is expected to be jailed in Moscow now that a Russian court is extending her sentence. Meanwhile, Congress closing loopholes. What prompted lawmakers to pass a bill to protect inmates in federal custody. Then, God bless you, Gesundheit. Spring is springing and allergy season is upon us. Why experts say you'll need more tissue and will likely be sneezing more often.
Plus, after spending 6 days in jail, Justice Smollett is out on bond awaiting his appeal. Why his family says he's been targeted for being black and gay. And although some have tried to erase the rich history of black people at beaches, one historic sandy location on the East Coast is getting new life. The investment from Congress to save the shore. Soulmates, we have all of that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
We begin today with breaking news from Russia. WNBA star Brittney Griner will remain under arrest there for at least 2 more months. Russian officials say she was carrying a vaping device and cannabis oil in her luggage at an airport. State media there reporting investigators requested more time to draw up their case against the basketball star. The court, it granted the request and extended her detention until May 19th. Russian officials say Griner is sharing a cell with 2 other inmates who have no previous convictions and are also charged with similar offenses. However, U.S. Embassy officials in Russia say they have not made contact with her still. Now, if convicted, Griner faces up to 10 years in a Russian prison. And so it's very concerning that this is still weeks after. And we have not had anyone, no officials here in the U.S. make contact with her. We're seeing her really for the first time in clips that are being posted to social media by Russian news outlets. And also this information is coming from Russian state TV. So you always have to take that information with a grain of salt because we know how the media is controlled in Russia.
There's a video circulating online right now of her just walking past, and she just does not seem okay. And of course, in this type of situation, how could she be? A lot of people online are wondering right now if this were a white woman, not even a celebrity white woman, if this were a white woman, would it be the same situation? Cori Bush, she's been tweeting a lot. And so everyone thinks that if the fact that she's a black woman, that's why this is not getting more press coverage, and I'm happy that we're covering, but I still think that more people need to know about what's going on with her.
They do. And, I'm really concerned about her mental health, right? They're saying she could be in there until May. We don't know what happens after that. But let's compare her to the young lady that went on Russian TV and protested. She was seen, less than 48 hours later? And I feel like sometimes that's a harsher crime, being that it happened in this moment. But I'm hoping that she's safe, and I'm really concerned about her mental health.
We are also getting new video today of Ukrainian forces ambushing a Russian military vehicle. The vehicle was filled with Russian troops that were traveling there near the Ukraine-Russian border when it was intercepted and run off the road by Ukrainian fire. Meanwhile, a theater converted into a bomb shelter is one of the latest civilian targets that Russia has bombed in Ukraine. Officials say the airstrike blew the building apart, burying people in the rubble. Satellite images of the theater show the word children written in Russian in large letters on the pavement in front and behind of the building. So far, there is no word on the number of deaths, but the city's deputy mayor told reporters that up to 2,000 people were seeking refuge in the building. Meanwhile, Ukraine's deputy prime minister says today that the country is hoping to evacuate civilians through 9 humanitarian corridors. So far, more than 3.2 million people have fled Ukraine since the start of the invasion.
And for the first time, President Biden is calling Vladimir Putin a war criminal. President Biden has condemned the attacks in the last 3 weeks, but yesterday was the first time he called Putin a war criminal. The Kremlin says it was unacceptable for Biden to call the Russian leader a war criminal. Now, the president's shift came hours after Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's address to Congress Wednesday. It is what it is. We have to call what we are seeing happening here. And, you know, they're saying the more desperate he gets because he's not being successful when it comes to taking over Ukraine right now, you know, he may get dangerous. We don't know what he's going to try and do next. We saw what happened when it was clear what they had marked on the street. There were children in that building. It did not matter to Putin and his army. So we don't know how bad this is going to be. And we just spoke about Brittney Griner, right? Hoping she doesn't get any backlash because the things that's being said about him.
You know, I'd like to commend the firefighters who are fighting these fires. There's a video of firefighters on Twitter right now visibly tired, visibly exhausted after fighting that 6-story building fire. And so also, it seems as if Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and Biden, they're kind of playing good cop, bad cop. First, Biden said it's not a war crime. Then Lloyd Austin said, oh, he tiptoed around, it's not a war crime. And then now Biden coming back saying sternly that this was a war crime. And I think that Biden needs to say those words so people can know that this is really serious right now.
It's been surprising how maybe timid the president has been to assess Vladimir Putin as the criminal, as the war criminal that he is. And now that we're seeing hospitals and schools and maternity wards that are being hit apparently by these older weapons that are less precise, but clearly being targeted in civilian areas, that is a war crime. And so we saw this morning, Secretary of State Antony Blinken came out and agreed with the president, saying that he also personally feels Vladimir Putin is a war criminal. But it's this rhetoric that needs to be ramped up by action as well. And so it remains to be seen how Congress and the West Wing feel besides giving money and weapons, what they can actually do.
You know, there's a hospital that had 2,000 workers, and it went down from 2,000 workers to 200 workers. People are fleeing, but also what is really great is that people around the world are coming together to help. And so there are hospital doctors helping with trauma via Zoom, flying in to help out these workers in the hospital right now so that they can know what to do in a situation like this, helping from us all across the world.
And I'll say this real quick, with midterms coming up, I think it's important that President Biden takes a stance the way he's taking it, because he does not want to be called less than a man when midterms roll around.
All right. HBCUs that were hit by bomb threats this year are getting some help from the federal government. Vice President Harris announced a new grant program from the Department of Education that will provide funds for schools directly affected by bomb threats.
These threats have brought fear and anxiety to places of peace, as has been mentioned, to sanctuaries, to schools where young people live and learn, to houses of worship where so many of us seek solace.
The grants that range between $50,000 and $150,000 can be used to hire more security or to provide emotional counseling for students. About 57 HBCUs around the country were targeted by bomb threats this year.
2 members of the Congressional Black Caucus are calling for the Department of Homeland Security to stop deporting Haitian immigrants. Representatives Mondaire Jones and Ayanna Pressley sent a letter to the Homeland Security Secretary and CDC Director asking for the deportations to stop. The Biden administration has kicked more than 20,000 Haitians out of the country. The expulsions are a part of a Trump-era border management policy, and it's known as Title 42. The policy allows DHS to quickly expel foreign nationals arrested by U.S. border agents. The move comes under the guise of protecting the American public from immigrants who may have COVID-19. Now, Jones and Pressley, they both say that Biden has deported more Haitians than the last 3 presidents combined.
It looks like Donald Trump is punishing former Vice President Mike Pence for not being loyal enough. Trump says if he's nominated again for president, his former VP won't be on the ticket. Mr. Trump adds he doesn't think the people will accept Pence as his running mate. Now, Trump is still angry at Pence because he refused to stop the certification of the 2020 election. The former president has not formally announced he's running for the White House again yet.
Congress did something last week most people would have thought was already illegal. They passed a bill that explicitly prohibits federal law enforcement officers from having sex with people in their custody. The bill closes a loophole that allowed them to avoid a rape conviction by claiming an encounter was consensual. It became an issue after the 2018 case of an 18-year-old woman who said 2 detectives raped her inside of a police van. The cops who resigned said the young woman consented. Prosecutors dropped the sexual assault charges, and the men were sentenced to 5 years probation after pleading guilty to bribery and misconduct.
The Federal Reserve says it expects to increase interest rates 6 more times this year. They made the announcement yesterday as they raised rates by 0.25%. It is the first interest rate hike in 3 years. It was expected and increased in an attempt to slow down inflation. Analysts say the Fed's projections of the more interest rate hikes are a result of the instability of the world economy, partly due to the war in Ukraine.
Soulmates, we all agree gas prices are super high, right? Well, President Biden is asking for gas companies to drop the prices. Mr. Biden says gas prices should reflect a decreasing oil price. Now, in a tweet, Biden said the last time oil was $96 a gallon, gas was $3.61 a gallon. Now it's $4.31 a gallon. The president says gas companies should not pad their profits at the expense of hardworking Americans.
Georgia Senate hopeful Herschel Walker, he's coming under fire by a rival GOP Senate candidate. Gary Black released an attack ad on a new website this week that's devoted to allegations of abuse against the former NFL player. The 2-minute attack ad discusses allegations of abuse by Walker's ex-wife that have become public. Walker says he's accountable for anything that he has done in his past relationship with his ex-wife, who was given a protective order against Walker. Both Black and Walker are trying to oust Democrat Raphael Warnock, the current U.S. Senator from Georgia.
A mentee of the late Congressman John Lewis says that she will reintroduce the Freedom to Vote Act. Congresswoman Terry Sewell, the only African-American representative from Alabama, says she will push to get the bill passed after she is reelected this fall. The act has failed to make it out of the Senate this congressional term. Sewell says voting rights aren't just policy, but they are personal to her. The Congresswoman was raised in Selma, Alabama, one of the battlegrounds in the fight for voting rights in America during the Civil Rights era.
In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis gets his wish. If he does, 2 seats held by Black Congress members would be eliminated. NBC News says DeSantis is likely to call state legislators back for a special session. He wants to have a congressional map changed. That would get rid of 2 congressional seats held by Black Democrats. The seats are held by Val Demings and Al Lawson, but DeSantis may have a tough time changing the map. The current one was adopted by the Florida's legislature, which is controlled by Republicans. DeSantis has already lost the fight to change the map. Florida Supreme Court has already ruled against the governor's redistricting efforts.
New York Mayor Eric Adams is relaunching the controversial NYPD task force that was eliminated by former Mayor Bill de Blasio. The gun task force will be used in 30 police precincts around the country. Police reform advocates are leery about the new task force. They're worried it will be used to harass Black and Latino men like the stop and frisk methods used by the NYPD a decade ago. Stop and frisk was ruled unconstitutional by a district judge back in 2013. Now, Adams says the new task force was put together with input from police reform activists. New York has seen a dramatic rise in gun violence since the start of the pandemic.
A Kenosha off-duty police officer seen on video putting his knee on the neck of a 12-year-old girl to break up a fight has resigned. This incident had happened back on March 4th when 2 students were fighting in the school cafeteria. Cell phone video, it appears to show a fight between the 2 students as the off-duty officer tries to break it up before either being hit or falling backward. He apparently hit his head on the edge of a nearby table. Shortly after, he's seen on top of the student and appears to hold her head against the ground with one hand and then places his knee on her neck. It's not clear how long he kept it there because the cell phone footage ends shortly after. The school district says the officer was working as a security guard at the time of the incident.
If we need the police, they can be called. There's no need to occupy our schools, creating a war zone atmosphere for our children. A middle school does not need police to secure them when the community could be present to deal with our.
An attorney representing the family of the 12-year-old girl involved in the fight says she was defending herself from a bully. The school district identifies the officer as Sean Gutschow. They say he resigned from his role with the district this week, and it was effective as of Tuesday. The school district's not commenting on this because it's apparently going to lead to litigation, and they say they don't comment on that. But if he resigned just this week, that means that he's spent the last 2 weeks on the job still after having his grown knee on the neck of a child in that school. So he was expected to continue protecting them despite this video circling. And the Kenosha Police Department says that it's working with the school district to investigate this, but wants us to be cautious not to make conclusions based off a small piece of information shared on social media, as they called it. It's not a small piece. Look at that. That's a grown man right there with his knee on a child's neck.
Yes. Absolutely. This is very obvious. And actually, it's enough video that we need. It's really just enough, exactly what we need. And, you know, I'm with you, Seth. I don't feel like a resignation is enough. That is not going far enough at all. And so a lot of people online are wondering, hey, why am I even sending my child to school if this is what's going to happen? And if you ask me, Romeo, you might recall last year, I was very stern, and I wouldn't want my kid to go to school and there not be police. But these children, they're babies that are being treated this way in these schools, that now it's kind of like I stand firmly. I don't feel like we need police in schools.
We are torn, and you think about this. She's 12 years old. If he can't handle that situation without doing something like that, he shouldn't even be on the force. He shouldn't even be working in that field of work, right? And let's talk about how, yes, there was an altercation. Les, when you walk into something like this, there's going to be issues. You may slip, you may fall, someone may curse at you. You have to control yourself.
Right.
Not to the point where you do that. He crossed the line. 12 years old. He should not be hired anywhere else, and there should be more repercussions that he has to take on.
He was upset that he got hurt and then
Exactly.
decided to take it out on this little girl, and that is unacceptable.
Absolutely.
And the same way that we're talking about not having police officers with lethal force responding to mental health cases, we should be having the same conversation about schools, because there really is not a need for armed forces like this in schools. This 37-year-old police officer with just 4 years of experience clearly he did not have the temperament to be in that environment.
Absolutely, Seth. Less talking and more action. An Ohio woman could face 20 years in prison for her alleged racist and threatening voicemails. The Detroit Free Press newspaper says Sandra Bachman allegedly left messages on the phones of two African-American state lawmakers. In one voicemail, investigators say Bachman left a message on Representative Sarah Anthony's phone. Representative Cynthia Johnson was allegedly another target of Bachman's threats. Now, that message said Anthony wouldn't see the bullet coming. Threats against lawmakers in Michigan have been on the rise since the 2020 election. Now, 4 men are currently on trial for plotting to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
A former Louisiana State Police superintendent is denying leading a cover-up into the death of a black man who died in police custody. Kevin Reeves told lawmakers during a bipartisan grilling that there was no cover-up in the death of black motorist Ronald Green. Green was severely beaten by Louisiana State troopers in 2019. Police told Green's family he died in a car crash after a police pursuit, but body cam footage of the incident was released 2 years later, showing officers kicking, punching, and using a taser on Green. During yesterday's hearing, lawmakers expressed frustration after Reeves refused to condemn the troopers' actions. Green's mother, in an emotional testimony, said there was an obvious cover-up in her son's death. No trooper has been arrested or charged with the crime. Now, the Department of Justice is also investigating. What is there to investigate? They lied. They held on to the footage for over 2 years. And we talked about this here on the Fox Soul Black Report, how we want that cam footage released right away so we really know the truth. They were trying to figure out how could they cover this up. Once they do get caught, what can they do to keep themselves out of jail or to maybe get another job? That's what this was. Everyone dropped the ball on here, and this man lost his life. Again, another situation. He was being pursued by the police. Yes, he may not have, gave in right away. He put up a fight, so to speak, but not a physical fight. But they still put hands on him and tased him. Disgusting.
The fact that the families and the police departments all have to do investigations, additional investigations, deep dive investigation. I forgot the exact word that they called it. But the fact that they have to keep doing more and more investigations and nothing has been found, the smell test, it doesn't quite pass it for me. And this is one of those stories, Ronald Green, that lives in my mind rent free, that I can't quite wrap my mind around how this happened and how no one is being responsible for his death.
We talked about Colin Kaepernick and his new effort to pay for second autopsies for families who deal with situations like this, especially families of loved ones killed by police. And so it is just mind-boggling that there were body-worn cameras on these officers and they lied. They said that he died in a car crash, and there's clearly video of them tasing and beating him. And if not for the FBI's reinvestigation of this and a second autopsy that discounted what the original coroner's report said, there may not have been any information. So it's important work for these second autopsies to be happening, and we see that consistently.
Yes.
The family of a Jamaican immigrant is angry with the Pennsylvania District Attorney's decision not to prosecute anyone in the death of their loved one. Venango County's DA says Peter Spencer was shot 11 times by a coworker in self-defense on a hunting trip. Spencer, he was the only black person that was on this trip back in December, and investigators say that he became delusional after ingesting some hallucinogenic mushrooms. Witnesses say he was wildly firing an AK-47 rifle into the air. They say he began pointing the weapon at other men on the trip. Police say one of those men fired 11 shots at him in self-defense. The family says they're surprised by the DA's decision. They say the decision was typical of the behavior of the justice system in that area. But this situation is quite concerning. 11 shots in self-defense seems to kind of be excessive. And I don't know, though, that how a normal person would respond when a gun is being. Actually, I have been a kid with guns being waved in my face before and didn't have one of my own to point back and ran. But it's a scary situation. I don't know if the skin color, though, the vilification of black people made them feel, if they were joking, that he might have been more serious. I don't know how well they knew him. There are a lot of questions.
Yeah, a lot of questions. It sounded like, I believe, was he a coworker? Or did he work with him?
Yes, he was a coworker.
So you may know this guy. You may have some familiarity with this guy. So why would you want to shoot 11 times? That seems like it's more personal or more anger toward this person. If you were talking about self-defense, if he's firing a gun wildly, maybe run away, walk away, maybe one shot, but 11 times, that seems like an awful lot to me.
You know, it does. And it really, for me, I've always been a person afraid of guns. I really wish that there was more reform on guns that could be done in the United States, because not everybody deserves to have a gun in their possession.
And then also just the account of what happened. All we have to go on is what the people who were there say. So, you know, he was the only black person. We have no idea what really could be going on or what could have happened.
Always two sides to every story.
More,